Zoya stood in front of the mirror. She was already dressed, just needed to put on her shoes and grab her bag, and she would be ready to go. She wasn't running late yet, but it was time for her to leave. However, she couldn't tear her gaze away from her reflection. She disliked the color black, but today it didn't matter. Zoya wore a knee-length black dress, black tights, and threw on a black blazer. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail. There was almost no makeup on her face, and she chose not to paint her lips with lipstick. In her hands, she held sunglasses. They would conceal her sad eyes and tears, and she would cry today because she had lost her best friend, and she was about to bid her farewell. Oh, how unfair it was. Lydia was still so young, and Zoya was almost the same age, just a difference of about 2 years. Can one really depart at 34? No, it shouldn't be like this. Why did her heart suddenly stop? Or was she seriously ill and just hiding it from everyone? Zoya didn't know. She knew nothing. Lydia was simply no longer in this world. And in a couple of hours, Zoya would be escorting her on her final journey. Zoya sighed deeply, trying not to cry. She smoothed her dress with her hands, which was already impeccably ironed. Well, it's time to go, she thought, grabbed her bag, and left the house. The cemetery was filled with so many people that Zoya felt overwhelmed. She hardly knew anyone. Lydia had no relatives, or at least, that's what she always said. The only family she had was an aunt, but she didn't come, even though they were best friends. Zoya never learned Lydia's family tree. Lydia used to live in a village. Her parents had passed away, leaving her a small house as an inheritance, but Zoya had never been there. She couldn't even recall the exact name of the village. Lydia might have mentioned it a few times during their friendship, but Zoya didn't remember, and they had no mutual friends. They were best friends from college, but they always had different circles, and life had separated them for many years. Zoya had seen only one familiar person once. It was Lydia's cousin, whom she knew. It was Lydia's aunt's daughter. Zoya greeted her. Valentina wanted to say something but changed her mind. She carefully scanned the crowd that came to say their goodbyes. Lydia had so many friends, I didn't even know, muttered Zoya, turning to Valentina. The woman looked at her and quietly replied, Lydia had very few friends. Only some of them were her business acquaintances, her colleagues. You could say you were the only close one, and these people, they were all her neighbors in the building. Dear viewers, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It motivates me to post new videos every day. Lydia left a note with a request. She wanted everyone from the 5-story building where she lived to be invited to her funeral. I don't know why she had such a wish. Maybe it was because in life, she was a bit lonely. She was never surrounded by many friends and relatives. Perhaps she wanted a crowd around her on such a day. I don't understand why all this. It seems to me that only you and I are grieving here, a couple of her colleagues from work, and everyone else. Look at their faces. They just came to eat and drink for free. But I couldn't ignore her request because it was her last wish. Valentina wiped away her tears, stepped aside, and Zoya fell into deep thought. So Lydia knew she would die soon if she wrote a note with a request. It means she was hiding some illness. Why didn't she tell her anything? Zoya would have helped her. She wouldn't have left her alone. They would have fought for her life together. What happened to her? Why didn't she say anything to her? When it was all over, Zoya couldn't come to her senses for a long time. When the mound was formed and large wreaths were placed on top, Zoya felt a tremor. She thought she might faint, but it didn't happen. Only her heart continued to tremble inside, and Zoya knew that the pain of losing her friend could never be eased, because now Zoya was left completely alone. When Zoya was about to go home, Valia stopped her. I need to talk to you. Let's go somewhere private. I don't need witnesses. They moved away from prying ears and eyes, and Zoya looked at Lydia's cousin with curiosity. Valentina took out a plain white envelope from her purse. She held it in her hands for a while and then handed it to Zoya, saying, "Take it, it's for you." Anger, confusion. Zoya turned the envelope in her hands, examining it from all sides. What is this, Valia? She shrugged. But it seemed strange. It was impossible to understand whether Valentina didn't know what was in the envelope or simply didn't want to discuss it. I was supposed to give you this letter. Lydia wrote it. It's meant for you. I hadn't read it. Lydia said I should give it to you if something happened to her. It was about 3 months ago. I think Lydia knew something would happen to her, so she gave it to me. I asked her what was going on with her. Why was she contemplating such things? But she just laughed and said that anything could happen. I didn't pay much attention to it. If only I had known. Valentina wiped away her tears, said goodbye to Zoya, and walked away. Zoya stared at the envelope. She wanted to open it right now, but restrained herself. If this was Lida's last letter, she had to read it at home. She didn't want to break down in tears right here, in front of all these strangers. An hour later, Zoya was at home. She didn't even change. She threw her bag at the doorstep and went into the living room. She climbed onto the couch and slowly opened the envelope. Inside were 2 sheets of paper. Zoya immediately recognized the neat handwriting of her best friend. Tears welled up in her eyes. Why? Why didn't you tell me anything, Lida? Even if there was nothing I could do to help you, at least I could have been with you. Zoya whispered sadly. She sighed, tried to calm down, and then began to read the letter. My dear Zoya, you know how much I love you and what you mean to me. If you're reading this letter now, then I'm no longer here. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about my health. You see, I knew you would make me do everything possible, make me fight to the end. But I didn't need that anymore. The chances of survival were so small that I would have just suffered longer. I made my choice, my dear. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry for having to hide things from you for years, and for that, you'll probably hate me. I know, but when I tell you why I did this, maybe you won't harbor ill feelings towards me. I made a choice once, maybe it was wrong, but it's too late to talk about it now. I just want to confess to you that Zoya read the letter, and with each line, her face became paler and paler. When she finally composed herself, she took the letter again and read it once more. The full range of emotions passed over her face. Anger, hurt, confusion, indecision, anger again, bitterness, and once again, confusion. Finally, determination settled on her face. She already knew what she needed to do. But how would Grisha react to this? After all, this concerned him more than her. How to tell him, how to explain everything. Zoya and Lida met during their first year of college. They lived in the same room in the dormitory. Zoya was only 18, having entered college right after high school. Lydia, at the age of 20, didn't manage to enter college immediately after high school. It took her 3 attempts. They became fast friends, despite Lydia being a village girl. She was, in spirit, close to urban Zoya. The girls were inseparable and didn't think about boyfriends or hobbies at first because they both had one goal: to study well and graduate from college with honors. In the beginning, they spent all their free time with textbooks, but after 6 months, they became more social. They started going out with their classmates, but Lydia preferred to hang out with Zoya rather than other guys. She often declined invitations to noisy gatherings, citing fatigue or some other reason. Additionally, she frequently took walks in the nearby park. On one of these evening strolls, she met a young man and passionate feelings ignited between them. Lydia fell head over heels in love, believing that the guy felt the same way. It was only a month later that she revealed to her best friend that she had a boyfriend whom she deeply loved. Zoya was offended by this. Why did you keep silent for so long? Aren't you ashamed? The best friend is named. Okay, I'm not mad at you, of course. Zoya exaggerated. Naturally, she wasn't mad at her best friend. Everyone should have something personal that belongs only to them, and everyone has the right to keep a secret. Only the person themselves decides whether to share it with someone or not. If Lida decided to tell, it meant it was serious. All right, I'm not upset. Well, tell me, who is he? Does he love you? Have you done anything yet? Tell me quickly. I'm so curious, chattered Zoya. Lida thoughtfully twirled the lock of her long, light hair in her hands. He's wonderful. I think he loves me too, and the ladies were close. Oh, you'll see him yourself soon. I'll introduce you soon, just wait a little. You'll find out everything. Lida didn't mention the guy's name or age. She didn't even have a single photo of him. Zoya decided to wait until Lida introduced them, but time passed, and the introduction never happened. Zoya began to notice that Lida often seemed sad and contemplative. One beautiful evening, she even came home in tears and told Zoya that she had broken up with her boyfriend. He said he doesn't love me anymore. He said he met someone else, and that girl captured his heart. And that he would like to be with me, but you can't command the heart, and he honestly confessed. He broke up with me to date the other girl with a clear conscience, Lida recounted. Zoya, how could this happen? I loved him so much. Why does life work this way? How do I get out of this situation now? Zoya wanted to support her friend in some way. Forget about him. If he doesn't love you, let him roll to someone else. It's good that nothing serious happened yet. Otherwise, he could have left you in an even worse situation. Let it be this way. Well, such an honest guy came along, admitted everything. Lida, don't cry. You're lucky that it turned out this way. It's better to part now than later be deceived and abandoned. Consider that you both mutually agreed to break up. You'll meet a good guy who will cherish you. Then you'll get married and have a bunch of kids for him. Zoya tried to comfort Lida. Lida silently stared at the ceiling. She whispered, I'll have a bunch of kids. Yes, I'll have a bunch of kids for him. Every day, Zoya tried to cheer up her friend. After a month, Lida seemed to have somewhat recovered from the painful breakup, and that's when Zoya confessed, I've wanted to tell you for a long time, but I was afraid to admit it. You were so sad, and I feared you would grieve a lot when you saw how happy I am. But now I see that you're starting to recover. I want to share this with you, you know. I met a guy, Lida. I think he's the one. I fell in love with him, honestly. Love at first sight, and I think he's crazy about me too. You should see how he looks at me, as if I'm the only one in the world. We've known each other for 2 months, but we only started dating a month ago. I don't know why he waited for a month. We've met many times in a group. I've seen how he looked at me. In short, we're dating, and he's already talking about wanting to be with me forever. Imagine Lida. He's probably hinting that he wants to marry me. Lida watched her best friend with a sad smile. Fate had its own irony. Lida had broken up with her boyfriend a month ago, and at the same time, Zoya had found her love. Everything in this world is relative. I really want to introduce you. We're meeting in the park today. Will you come with me? We'll chat a bit, take a walk, and then we'll go home. Will you come with me, please? I'm asking you. I really want you to meet him. Lida agreed. If only she knew what this introduction would turn into for her, what emotions she would experience. Right now, she would pack her things, leave the city forever, never to see anyone again. But Lida didn't know. In the evening, they went to the park. Zoya's boyfriend hadn't arrived yet. The girls sat on a bench and chatted, and then Zoya loudly shouted, addressing someone, Hey, we're here. Come here. Then she whispered, Lady, here he is, my boyfriend. It seemed to Lida that she was in slow motion. She turned for a long time, her gaze lingered on the guy, and she blinked slowly. She stared at the guy who approached them closely. The guy kept looking at her, and Zoya quickly kissed him on the cheek, then said, Lida, meet him. This is Grisha, my boyfriend. Grisha, meet Lida, my best friend and the most wonderful person in the world. Lida stared at Grisha in silence. She couldn't utter a word. Grisha was silent too, while Zoya chattered nonstop. What's wrong with you two? Why are you so gloomy, as if I'm forcing you to get acquainted? What happened? Don't you know each other? Grisha opened his mouth to respond, but Lida preempted him. No, of course not. We don't know each other at all. How could we know each other, right? Nice to meet you, Grisha. Zoya told me so much about you that it feels like I've known you for a long time, mumbled Grisha. And I'm also pleased to meet you. Zoya, we can. Oh, I probably should leave you two alone. I just remembered I have something to do. It doesn't matter. I'll go. And you continue your walk? Just wanted to tell you, Grisha, be careful not to hurt my friend. I'm ready to do anything for her well-being. I'll destroy ready for it. Anyone who causes her pain understood. I'm very glad that you're making my friend happy. She's radiant. Be happy. Happy for both of you, and you suit each other very well. Okay, I guess it's time for me to just go. When Zoya returned to the dormitory, Lida was not there. There was only a note in which Lida informed her that something had happened, and she urgently had to leave for the village. Zoya was able to reach her friend only after a couple of weeks. It turned out that Lida had left the university, or rather, she took an academic leave due to family circumstances. It concerned her aunt, her only relative. Lida said she would be in the village for about a year and then return to the city. She needed to take care of her aunt, and the girl couldn't leave her, despite Zoya's insistence to come and help. She was categorically against it. No, no. Study. Take care of your own affairs, I'll manage. We'll see each other later. And now I can't. Zoya wanted to visit her friend later, but Lida didn't even mention the address. They hadn't seen each other for a whole 5 years. Lida never returned to the university. They kept in touch, but overall, their communication was no longer as close. Over these 5 years, Zoya got married to Grisha. She graduated from college with honors, and they wanted to have a child right away, but it didn't work out for several months. Then Zoya went to the doctor. After many examinations, it turned out that she had a congenital pathology that would prevent her from ever becoming a mother. It was a terrible blow for the girl. Despite Grisha's attempts to console her, saying it wasn't the most important thing, she couldn't handle the news calmly. She had a nervous breakdown because of it, and then she decided that they couldn't be together with Grisha. She decided to divorce him, saying, "You deserve a better woman, someone who can give you a real family and not me. You need someone who can bear your children, and I can never make you happy. I can't be with you anymore." Despite Grisha's attempts to comfort and persuade her, Zoya stood her ground. Their married life was over. They got divorced, and Grisha immediately moved to another city, wanting to be far away from the place where he couldn't find happiness. Almost immediately after their separation, Zoya called her friend and told her everything. Lida was at her side in 3 days. After such a long separation, Zoya could barely recognize her friend. Lida had changed significantly, becoming so mature, as if she had undergone some serious trials. She was slim but toned. Lida managed to pull Zoya out of a severe condition, and she remained in the city. Sometimes she would go to the village, but not for long. She always returned to the city, renting an apartment. She never got married, stating that it was not something she needed. After a while, Lida started a small business, opening a vegetable store that gained significant popularity. The store always sold high-quality products, and the business prospered. Zoya began a new life. She still loved Grisha, and other men were not of interest to her. However, she no longer considered herself a woman someone could love. She still thought of herself as a reject. Zoya was abruptly pulled from her memories by a phone call. It was Valentina. "Have you read the letter?" Zoya closed her eyes and replied, "You knew everything." "Yes, I knew. She reminded us of the promise not to tell." "I'm glad you found out. It's a shame it was only after she left. But it was her choice. Zoya, you have to go. They need you, not just you. You'll tell him." Zoya frowned. "I'll think about it. She gave me the right to decide for myself. I haven't decided yet. Tomorrow, I'll go to the village." The next evening, Zoya was already in the village where Lida had been born and where she had lived for the 5 years when she left the institute. Zoya looked once more at the address written in the letter. Yes, it's here. Zoya stood in indecision for a few more minutes. She couldn't work up the courage to unlock the wicket, and then the door to the house opened and an elderly woman came out. She was very full-figured. She stared at Zoya, and then she shouted, "Zoya!" Zoya realized it was Yevgenia Vasilievna, Lida's own aunt. She knew why Zoya had come. She nodded to the woman and waved quietly. "Come in," and Zoya went in. When she took off her sneakers and entered the house, she saw a boy and a girl at the table. They were a brother and sister, 12 years old. They were holding hands and looking tensely at Zoya. "Hello," they said at the same time. Looking at Zoya, Zoya sat down on the chair offered by Evgenia Vasilievna. "Hi," Zoya could barely utter. "Your mom's best friend. She's often talked about you and about our father too. Are you here just to meet us?" "Mom said before she left that you were coming," the girl said quietly. Zoya looked at Lida's children. God, how much they looked like Grisha. When Zoya introduced her best friend to her favorite young man, she did not know one thing. Lida was the one that Grisha left for Zoya. He was dating Lida, and the girl loved him very much. But the heart cannot command, it's true. Grisha met Zoya and instantly fell in love with her. He honestly admitted it to Lida. He did not want to deceive her, and they broke up. Grisha began dating Zoya, but Grisha did not know that Lida was already pregnant by him when they broke up, and Lida herself did not know it. She found out before Zoya decided to introduce her to her young man. Lida thought that she should tell Grisha about the pregnancy, but when she saw that Grisha was in love with her friend, she realized that she could not do it. And she decided that she would never tell Zoya that she too loved Grisha and that she was pregnant by him. Grisha did not tell his lover that before her his girlfriend was Lida. Alida dropped everything and went to the countryside. She decided to keep the baby. She told her aunt everything, cried and sobbed, and her aunt supported her. She took her in, and after a while Lida gave birth to twins, Slavik and Tanechka. No one knew who the father of her children was. Only Evgenia Vasilievna and Valentina were aware, but they didn't tell anyone about it. And Lida had no plans to return to the city. She thought she would stay in the village with her children forever. Lida hoped that her friend would be happy with Grisha. She knew they got married, invited her to the wedding, but Lida didn't come. She hoped she would never have to see the happy couple. She loved her best friend, but she also loved her husband. Seeing them together was very difficult. However, 5 years later, Zoya called her and told her about her separation from her husband. She was in such a terrible state, crying and screaming into the phone, that Lida couldn't leave her in trouble. She returned to the city, leaving her children with her aunt, so she stayed in the city, constantly visiting her children. After she set up her business, she gave money to her aunt and also raised funds for her children's future. Everything was fine until Lida started feeling unwell and learned about her illness. She didn't make desperate attempts to save her life. She considered it not worth it every spring. She just took care of her children's future, put everything she had in their name, and left a letter to her best friend, at least to tell her in it. Zoya looked at the children, seeking an answer from Lida's clothing. Finally, Zoya was able to say, "I came not only to meet you, I came to take you with me, introduce you to your father, only if you want to." The boy and the girl looked at each other. They looked at each other for a while, still holding hands, and then the girl said, "Yes, we want to." A week later, Zoya was already at home with Slavik and Tanya. She took the most necessary of their things. Her sister and brother were very wary. They were a little afraid of the moment when they would have to meet their father, and Zoya didn't know if she would be able to find Grisha at all. He left for another city after they separated. They never called or met again. Maybe he no longer had the phone number that was stuffed in her cell phone, but she decided not to waste time. She dialed his number. There was a dial tone. At least the caller was available. "Hello?" It was Grisha's voice. Zoya was silent and Grisha was silent. And then he said, "I did not erase your number from memory. I know it's you, Zoya." Zoya blushed and then immediately asked him, "Why didn't you ever tell me that you were dating Lida?" Grisha sighed. "You know, I wanted to tell you right away the moment you introduced us. Then in the park, she let me know that she didn't want me to tell you. I mean, she didn't tell you either. If you're asking about it after all these years, it means you just found out about it. Did Lida tell you about it after all?" Grisha could not believe that Lida hid the truth from him and that she hid the children from him for so many years, but he forgave her after so many years. Lida, as in the first time, gave Grisha and Zoya the opportunity to be happy. The first time she just stepped aside, giving the opportunity for loving hearts to be together. And the second time she reunited them and entrusted them with her children, whom she loved more than anything else in the world. I suggest checking out my next videos and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching. See you soon.